Galactic strength test obliterated by humans' first attempt, the best HFY stories. The Galactic Council was abuzz with excitement. For millennia, they had tested the limits of strength across countless species, measuring power, endurance, and resilience in ways unimaginable to most. The test was legendary, designed to determine which species could lay claim to the title of the strongest in the galaxy. It had humbled the mighty Telharians, who were known for their immense size and natural strength. The swift Karoks, masters of agility and speed, had faltered. Even the mighty Dragorans, with their dense, armored hides and brute force, had fallen short in comparison to the expected standard. But today, the Council had a new challenger, a species they hadn't considered at all: humanity. The humans were a young, primitive species, barely out of their infancy on the galactic stage. Still, there was something about them that intrigued the Council. They were unpredictable, innovative, and determined, but no one expected them to succeed. The galactic strength test had always been an indicator of raw, physical power, and humanity wasn't known for that. Their strength wasn't physical, it was something else. And yet, there they stood, a representative of the human species, ready to face the test. His name was Captain Jacob Carter, a soldier from Earth. The crowd of alien spectators murmured in disbelief as Jacob stepped forward, his uniform tailored to fit his human frame, his eyes locked with the towering officials of the Council. The test itself was simple in theory, a machine that could simulate the most grueling trials of strength ever conceived. It could subject an individual to near-impossible levels of pressure, combat scenarios, and physical strain. The goal was to survive as long as possible without breaking. "Begin," came the voice of the chief overseer, his many eyes narrowing as he studied the human with a mixture of curiosity and condescension. The moment the test began, the machine activated, unleashing a barrage of challenges. First, a gravitational field increased by a factor of 10, pinning Jacob to the floor, his body strained, muscles shaking under the intense pressure. But he held on, his breathing steady. He gritted his teeth, sweat trickling down his face, but he didn't falter. Next came intense heat waves, followed by bursts of freezing cold. The air around him shimmered with the extremes of temperature. But Jacob adapted. The humans were resourceful, and it was this adaptability that had seen them through countless battles on their home planet. As the test escalated, so did Jacob's resolve. The Council looked on, baffled. No species had ever managed to endure such extremes for more than a few minutes. But here was this human soldier, his pulse steady, his focus unwavering. And then, the machine ramped up once more. Suddenly, a holographic representation of a Dragoran appeared, massive and roaring, charging toward Jacob at full speed. The hologram was built to simulate the absolute strength of the beast. It was designed to crush anyone it came into contact with. But Jacob wasn't intimidated. In an instant, he reached into his utility belt and deployed a series of small gadgets. They weren't weapons, just tools: a shield, a quick-fire grappling hook, and a small drone to act as a distraction. He ducked, avoided the hologram's charge, and then used the grapple to swing behind it. With a quick strike, he disabled the projection, his mind working faster than the simulation could keep up. The crowd went silent. This wasn't just about strength, it was about ingenuity, persistence, and resourcefulness. As the test finally reached its peak, a massive storm of cosmic radiation and energy was unleashed in the machine, meant to break even the strongest. It was an all-out assault on the human body, testing endurance in every form. But Captain Carter, with every ounce of strength and willpower, pushed through, standing tall despite the onslaught. His resolve did not crack. When the machine finally powered down, the room fell into an almost eerie silence. Jacob Carter stood there, panting but unbroken, his clothes singed, but his spirit stronger than ever. The Council had no words. The galactic strength test, one of the most difficult trials in the universe, had been obliterated by a single human's determination. Captain Jacob Carter, and by extension humanity, had shattered the impossible. The chief overseer, visibly stunned, spoke at last, his voice trembling. You humans are remarkable. We did not foresee this. We did not foresee you." Jacob didn't boast, didn't gloat. He simply nodded, his gaze steady. "We don't always fight to be the strongest," he said calmly, "but we never stop trying." The Council, once skeptical, now regarded humanity with a new sense of respect. It wasn't raw power that made them unique, it was their refusal to ever be defeated, their relentless pursuit of excellence, and their unwavering will to never give up, no matter the odds. And in that moment, humanity earned a place among the stars. The test had been obliterated, but the legacy of what they stood for, their strength of spirit, would echo across the galaxy for generations to come. Galactic strength test obliterated by humans' first attempt, the best HFY stories. Part 2, The Ripple Effect. In the days that followed Jacob Carter's victory, the galaxy was abuzz. Word spread like wildfire, not just about his extraordinary physical and mental endurance, but about the humans themselves, a species that had once been dismissed as primitive, confined to a distant, blue planet on the edge of the galaxy, was suddenly the topic of discussion across the most advanced worlds. Every species, from the stoic and ancient Vren to the calculating Thorians, looked on with curiosity, respect, and in some cases, fear. The Council had decided to grant humanity a seat at the table, an invitation to join the Intergalactic Federation of Worlds. It was a huge deal, one that carried both honor and responsibility. But there was a hitch. As much as the Council had been impressed by Jacob's performance, there were whispers of doubt. Had it been a fluke? Was it an anomaly? Could humans really stand up to the challenges of galactic politics and warfare? To prove themselves, humanity was given a task, a trial far more complex than the galactic strength test. They were to be sent on a mission to a distant sector of the galaxy, a place where tensions had been rising for centuries between two war-hungry species, the powerful Thraxians and the elusive and highly intelligent Xerians. There was a delicate peace agreement in place, one that was on the verge of collapsing. The Council needed an intermediary to handle delicate negotiations, someone who could outthink both sides, someone with the ability to unite instead of divide. The humans were chosen for one simple reason: they had done the impossible once. Now they would have to prove they could do it again. Captain Jacob Carter wasn't sent alone. He was assigned a team, a diverse mix of humanity's finest diplomats, tacticians, and experts in various fields. Together, they were to journey to the heart of the conflict and broker a deal that had eluded the galaxy's best minds for decades. When they arrived at the neutral station orbiting the contested system, the tension was palpable. The Xerians were a species of shadowy figures, experts in subterfuge and negotiation, while the Thraxians were massive, warlike creatures, known for their brute strength and inability to compromise. The two species loathed each other, and the mere thought of sharing a room with the other was enough to make even the most seasoned negotiators break a sweat. The Council's ambassador to the station, a seasoned Thorian named Aerith, greeted them with a quiet air of skepticism. "The situation here is delicate," Aerith warned, his voice calm but firm. "The Thraxians will demand concessions, and the Xerians will refuse any terms they deem too favorable to the Thraxians. I trust your human team can handle this?" Jacob didn't flinch. "We'll figure it out. Just give us the time and space." The first few days were a whirlwind of tense meetings, mistrust, and deadlocked discussions. The Thraxians would growl, their sharp tusks gleaming with aggression, while the Xerians remained eerily silent, communicating through cryptic gestures and hidden meanings. Jacob and his team tried every approach: diplomacy, bargaining, and even attempting to find common ground between the two species' most bitter disputes. But it was clear that nothing short of a miracle would work. On the fourth day, after yet another failed negotiation, Jacob sat with his team in a small, private room. Everyone was frustrated, but it was Jacob who broke the silence. "Why are we trying to negotiate on their terms?" he asked. "What if we stop trying to make them agree to something they don't want and start thinking about what they need, not just what they're willing to give up?" The room went quiet. Humanity was good at adapting, and it had taken them a long time to realize that their strength wasn't just physical. It was their creativity, their ability to solve problems in ways others didn't consider. Jacob had an idea, a wild one. The humans had done the impossible before, now they would do it again. But this time, by changing the rules entirely. Over the next 72 hours, Jacob and his team began crafting a bold new plan. They would use the rivalry between the Thraxians and the Xerians to their advantage, but not in the way anyone expected. Instead of focusing on what each side could lose or gain in the negotiations, They began to shift the conversation to a joint venture, a project that would unite both species, leveraging their respective strengths. The Xerians were brilliant engineers, capable of creating advanced technologies, but they lacked the resources to make their visions a reality. The Thraxians, on the other hand, were resource-rich but lacked the sophistication to use those resources efficiently. The humans proposed a cooperative effort. The Thraxians would provide the raw materials, and the Xerians would design advanced weaponry and technology to defend against the growing threats in the galaxy. In return, both sides would share in the profits and advancements. The deal was mutually beneficial, and both sides stood to gain. It was a gamble, one that was based not on force or might, but on innovation and trust. And it worked. When the final agreement was signed, the two species agreed to halt their hostility, at least for the time being, and began the cooperative project. There were no grand speeches, no show of power, just an unspoken acknowledgement that humanity had, once again, done the impossible. Back on Earth, the news spread like wildfire. Jacob Carter and his team had brokered peace where none seemed possible. Humanity had once again proven that it wasn't strength alone that made them unique, but their ability to find solutions where none existed. For those who had once doubted them, for those who had seen them as a primitive species, it was now clear, humans were a force to be reckoned with, and they would be counted among the stars for generations to come. The galaxy, it seemed, was no longer a place where the strongest survived. It was a place where those who could adapt, think, and innovate, those who could never stop trying, would find a way to thrive. And humanity, the youngest of the galactic species, was leading the charge. Their strength, after all, was not just in their bodies, but in their hearts and minds, and that strength had just changed the course of history. Galactic strength test obliterated by humans' first attempt, the best HFY stories. Part 3, The Price of Greatness. With humanity's successful negotiation between the Thraxians and Xerians, the galaxy took note, and their reputation grew. The once dismissed humans now had a place at the galactic table, a position that not only brought them new allies but also new challenges. The universe had begun to realize that humans were not just survivors of their planet's chaotic history, they were the heralds of change, capable of reshaping entire galactic ecosystems. But with such greatness came new dangers. The Council, while impressed, had a troubling question on their minds: how would humanity handle the darker side of the galaxy? The Thraxians and Xerians were a relatively simple conflict compared to what lay beyond. There were powers in the galaxy, ancient and unfathomable, that had existed long before humans arrived. Some of these species were not interested in peace, diplomacy, or cooperation. They were interested in power, and they viewed the rise of humanity as a potential threat. The first of these challenges came in the form of the Marauders, a brutal and ruthless faction of intergalactic raiders. The Marauders had built an empire on fear and destruction, conquering uncounted systems through sheer terror. They were known for wiping out entire civilizations, taking what they wanted, and leaving nothing but ash in their wake. Their leader, a towering figure known only as NIH Gore, was feared across the galaxy. His fleet was unstoppable, his strategy unpredictable. The Council had tried to negotiate with him before, but his response was always the same: total annihilation. When the Marauders arrived at the outer rim of the galaxy, they began to advance on neutral planets, slaughtering entire populations. The Council's response was swift. An emergency summit was called to discuss what could be done to stop them. But there was a problem: no one in the galaxy had the power to stop the Marauders. Everyone had failed, and the galaxy was on the verge of war. And that was when humanity's moment of reckoning arrived. Jacob Carter, now promoted to Admiral and the leader of Earth's Galactic Defense Force, stood at the forefront of the strategy meeting. The weight of the situation pressed heavily on him as he listened to the arguments from the various species. The Xerians argued for sabotage and stealth strikes, while the Thraxians advocated for a full-scale military assault. The Gathorians, ever the tacticians, suggested a counterintelligence operation to disrupt the Marauders' supply lines. But none of these strategies had worked in the past. The Marauders were too unpredictable, too chaotic. Jacob knew they would need something different, a force of nature, a new kind of weapon. But what would humanity's contribution be this time? "I think we need to meet them head-on," Jacob finally said. breaking the heated discussions in the room. His voice, calm and measured, but laced with determination, caught everyone's attention. Head on? With what? Human? A Thraxian general boomed, clearly unimpressed. We don't have enough firepower to face them directly. We're just not built for that kind of war. We don't need firepower, Jacob replied, his gaze steady. We need ingenuity. The Marauders are powerful, yes, but they're also reckless. They thrive on fear and unpredictability, but they lack the one thing that we have, the ability to adapt, to improvise. The room was silent as Jacob laid out his plan. It wasn't going to be a traditional battle. It was going to be something entirely different, a calculated series of guerrilla tactics, psychological warfare, and a daring plan to draw the Marauders into a trap so intricate that even they wouldn't see it coming. It would take everything humanity had learned about survival and innovation, and a heavy dose of boldness. The humans would lure HFY and his fleet to a remote star system, one that was on the verge of collapsing into a supernova. The plan was simple: use the chaos of the star's collapse to their advantage, forcing the Marauders into a no-win situation by sabotaging their communication networks, trapping them in a series of asteroids, and using their own arrogance against them. Jacob believed they could destroy the Marauder fleet before they could inflict any more harm. But there was a price. The plan was dangerous. It would take every ounce of humanity's cunning and risk-taking. It required sacrifices, and not everyone would make it out alive. Jacob had no illusions about what was at stake. As the day of the operation approached, Jacob stood alone on the observation deck of Earth's flagship, Valor, staring out at the stars. The weight of the decision pressed down on him. Thousands of soldiers, diplomats, and civilians had trusted him. They had followed him through every battle, every trial, and now, he was asking them to take the ultimate risk. They were on the brink of greatness, but also on the edge of destruction. Admiral Carter. A voice interrupted his thoughts. It was Lieutenant Mira Vallon, his closest advisor and friend. She stood beside him, gazing out at the same stars. Are you sure about this? Jacob turned to her, meeting her eyes. She had been with him from the beginning, from the first test to the peace mission with the Xerians and Thraxians. She was as much a part of humanity's rise as he was. No, he admitted quietly, but sometimes, you don't get to choose how it ends. You just have to make sure you fight for the right reasons. Mira nodded. We're with you, Admiral. Humanity has always fought for what's right, no matter the odds. As the operation commenced, humanity's strategy played out with precision. The Marauders, lured into the trap, fell victim to their own arrogance and chaos. The trap was set. HFY's fleet was pinned between the collapsing star and a maze of shifting asteroid fields. It was the most high-risk operation the galaxy had ever seen, and it worked. The Marauder fleet, overwhelmed by the unexpected tactics, was destroyed. HFY himself was captured. His reign of terror finally brought to an end. The victory was hailed as a turning point. Humanity had, once again, done the impossible. The galaxy had never seen a victory like this before, one built on tactics, cunning, and the refusal to give up. But the cost was high. Many human soldiers perished in the operation. Those who survived returned as heroes. But the price of greatness had been paid in blood. Jacob Carter's face was etched with both pride and sorrow as he addressed the galaxy after the victory. This victory was not ours alone. It was the culmination of every species in this galaxy that believed we could do what others thought was impossible. But it came at a price. We've learned that greatness is not just in strength or firepower. It's in the sacrifices we make, the risks we take, and the unity we forge with others. Humanity had once again proven their place among the stars. But this victory was not just about strength. It was about something more, the ability to fight, adapt, and, above all, endure. The galaxy was now looking to humanity not only as the strongest, but as the greatest force for change it had ever seen. Galactic strength test obliterated by humans' first attempt, the best HFY stories. Part 4, The Price of Peace. The victory over the Marauders had secured humanity's place in galactic history. No one could deny their resilience, their strength, and their unique ability to find solutions where others saw only dead ends. But as the months passed, a new, more insidious challenge began to rise. The galaxy, now looking to humanity with both admiration and trepidation, knew that peace could never be taken for granted. while the Marauder threat had been vanquished. New fractures appeared in the once stable alliances. There were whispers of a new faction emerging, an ancient order known as the Inquisitors. The Inquisitors were a sect of powerful beings who had once governed vast regions of the galaxy with an iron fist. They were not bound by the same rules as other species. Their understanding of the galaxy's cosmic forces was unparalleled, and they wielded a strange, terrifying power, the ability to manipulate energy on a level that no one, not even the most advanced races, could comprehend. They had long been in hiding, but now, their influence was growing once more. Rumors spread that they were pulling the strings behind various rebellions and dissension in the galaxy. The Inquisitors were an enigma, no one knew their true numbers, and no one knew their true purpose. But one thing was certain, their return spelled a threat to the fragile peace that humanity had fought so hard to secure. Jacob Carter, now leading the Galactic Defense Force as general, was once again called into action. He gathered his team, the same group that had stood by him through countless challenges. But this time, it wasn't a matter of combat or strategy. This time, they were tasked with something much more daunting, understanding the Inquisitors and stopping them before they could unravel everything humanity had worked for. "We don't know what we're facing, Jacob," Mira Valen said, her voice tense. "The Inquisitors have the power to tear apart the galaxy without ever firing a shot. We've already seen what they can do." Jacob nodded grimly. The Inquisitors' influence had been felt in the far corners of the galaxy, where once peaceful systems were now plunged into chaos. Inquisitor agents infiltrated governments, stoking rebellion, and weakening alliances. They were not just enemies, they were a virus that spread quickly and silently, their true intentions unclear. To counter them, humanity would need more than just military might. They needed to understand the Inquisitors' power and break it from within. But no one had ever faced them head-on and lived to tell the tale. The most advanced scientists and strategists across the galaxy were baffled. It seemed impossible to even study the Inquisitors without being wiped out by their energy manipulation. Jacob knew this would be a mission unlike any other. He turned to the one person who had always been his most trusted advisor, Dr. Alina Roscoe, one of Earth's top scientists, a genius in the field of energy manipulation and quantum physics. She had been working tirelessly to understand the power of the Inquisitors and had made a chilling discovery. "They're not just manipulating energy in a conventional sense," Alina explained, her voice low. "They're manipulating the very fabric of reality itself. We've theorized about such powers for centuries, but it's beyond anything we could have imagined. They don't just control energy, they can warp time, space, and even thoughts." Jacob listened carefully. "So, what you're saying is, they control reality?" "In a sense, yes," Alina replied. "They don't just create energy blasts or shields, they manipulate the core structures of existence itself. Their power isn't physical, it's mental and dimensional." Jacob's mind raced. This was beyond anything humanity had ever faced. The Inquisitors didn't just fight, they bent reality to their will. To defeat them would require more than brute force or even intelligence. It would require an understanding of the very nature of existence, and humanity was still learning. But there was hope. "Then we need to learn their methods," Jacob said, his determination never faltering. "We need to understand how they control reality, and how we can fight back." The next few weeks were a blur of research, experimentation, and desperation. Humanity's best minds, working together with the Council's top scholars, began studying the remnants of Inquisitor attacks, piecing together fragments of information, but no one truly understood how to defeat them. And then, a breakthrough came. One of the most unexpected sources, the ancient knowledge of the Dragorans. The Dragorans were one of the oldest species in the galaxy, and they had a hidden history, one that had been lost for eons. It was rumored that they had once faced a threat similar to the Inquisitors long ago and had developed a form of energy manipulation that allowed them to counter it. The Dragorans, however, were secretive, and their ancient knowledge was guarded. Jacob knew that if humanity was to stand a chance, they needed the Dragorans' help. The negotiations were tense. The Dragorans did not trust outsiders, and they certainly did not trust humanity. But Jacob, with his reputation and his unwavering resolve, managed to convince them to share their knowledge. What he learned would change the course of the war and the galaxy's future. The key to defeating the Inquisitors lay not in fighting them directly, but in creating a counterforce, an energy field capable of shielding the mind and blocking their reality-warping abilities. It was a difficult, delicate process, and it required humanity to tap into a power they had never fully understood, the power of unity. By linking their minds in a collective network, humanity could form a defense against the Inquisitors' manipulations. It was a gamble. The human mind was not naturally equipped to connect on such a scale. But if it worked, it could give humanity the edge they needed. As the Inquisitors made their move on a critical system, Jacob and his team launched the final phase of their plan. They created the network, linking their minds together through a series of advanced neural interfaces, amplifying their collective will and energy. It wasn't just technology. It was the spirit of humanity itself, their unwavering determination to protect what was theirs, their refusal to bow to a threat, no matter how powerful. When the Inquisitors attacked, expecting their usual victory, they encountered something they hadn't anticipated: resistance. As they attempted to manipulate the fabric of reality, they were met with a force stronger than any they had ever faced, a collective human will that bent the very energy of the galaxy back on itself. The battle raged, but the Inquisitors, once the supreme masters of energy, began to falter. Their control slipped as humanity's unity overwhelmed their manipulation. It wasn't a battle of strength, but a battle of wills, and humanity's will was stronger than anyone had expected. The Inquisitors were finally driven back, their influence shattered. In the aftermath, as the galaxy celebrated, Jacob Carter looked out at the stars once more. The galaxy was a dangerous place, and peace was fragile. But humanity had proven something far more important. The true strength of their species wasn't in their physical might, their advanced technology, or even their incredible ingenuity. It was in their spirit, their willingness to fight for the future, to never give up, and to protect each other, no matter the cost. Humanity had not only proven they were capable of great things, they had proven they would never stop trying, no matter how dark the universe became. And that, as Jacob knew, was the most powerful force in the galaxy. Galactic strength test obliterated by humans' first attempt, the best HFY stories. Part 5, The Dawn of a New Era. The battle against the Inquisitors had shattered the myth of their invincibility, but the victory had come at a heavy cost. Though humanity had proven its strength, its unity, and its resilience, the war had revealed a harsh truth: the galaxy was a far more dangerous place than they had imagined. The Inquisitors were only one of many forces that sought to reshape the universe according to their own vision, and the galaxy had just witnessed humanity's rise to prominence. In the months following the victory, the galactic community began to see humanity in an entirely new light. No longer viewed as the youngest and most inexperienced species, humans were now seen as equals, if not more than equals, by the galaxy's other inhabitants. And as humanity's influence grew, so did the challenges they faced. Jacob Carter, now appointed as the Supreme Commander of the Galactic Defense Coalition, GDC, sat in the command center of Earth's flagship Valor, overseeing the rebuilding efforts and the negotiations for a lasting peace. The Inquisitors were no longer a threat, but there were still factions lurking in the shadows, plotting their own agendas. Admiral, Mira Valen said, walking into the command center, her eyes shadowed with worry. We've received intelligence that the Atticari Empire has begun to rally its forces. They're preparing for something bigger. Jacob's gaze darkened. The Atticari were one of the oldest and most dangerous species in the galaxy, known for their ruthless imperialistic nature. They were not a species known for peaceful coexistence. They believed in the survival of the fittest, with their military being both sophisticated and brutal. The fact that they were stirring up trouble meant only one thing: they were preparing for war. Do we have any idea why? Jacob asked, standing up from his chair. They've begun making overtures to other aggressive factions. The Vren, the Caesians, even the Hramiths are starting to rally under their banner. They want to challenge the Council's authority and tear down the fragile peace we've fought for. Mira explained. The Atticari believe the galaxy needs a new order, one ruled by strength, not diplomacy. Jacob clenched his fists, the memories of the Marauder War still fresh in his mind. But this was different. The Atticari were no mere raiders or pirates, they were a powerful, established empire, and their leadership had an almost religious devotion to conquest. They would not rest until they had conquered the galaxy. We can't let them do this, Jacob said, pacing across the command center. If they succeed, everything we've worked for will be destroyed. The galaxy will fall into chaos, and we'll be back to where we started. We can't face them alone, Mira said. The Inquisitors were a different threat, but the Atticari, they'll tear through our defenses unless we unite the galaxy like never before. Jacob paused, his mind racing. The solution was both obvious and terrifying. Humanity had already proven that it could broker peace, create alliances, and inspire others to act. But this time, it wouldn't be enough to just talk. Humanity would need to lead the galaxy's greatest coalition, one that could challenge the Atticari on their own terms. We'll need to form a united front, Jacob said finally, a cold resolve settling in. It's time to create a true alliance, one that will stand against any force that dares threaten the galaxy's peace. The formation of the Galactic Alliance was a massive undertaking. Jacob's first step was to reach out to the Council, the very institution that had once doubted humanity's ability to make a difference. Now, humanity was stepping into the role of leadership. They would no longer be passive participants, they would be the ones setting the course. Earth's diplomats, strategists, and military leaders worked tirelessly to unite disparate factions, Thraxians, Xerians, Dragorans, and many others, into a single, cohesive fighting force. It took time, trust, and more than a few heated negotiations. But one by one, species that had once viewed humanity with suspicion or condescension joined the Galactic Alliance. But even as the alliances formed, the Atticari were already on the move. Their fleets, vast and powerful, began to advance across the galaxy's borders, tearing apart any defenses in their path. The pressure was mounting, and the Alliance had to move quickly. Jacob stood before the assembly of representatives from every allied species on the eve of battle. The meeting hall was vast, filled with the leaders and warriors of the galaxy's greatest powers. The tension was palpable, and Jacob could feel the weight of history bearing down on him. I know many of you still question humanity's place in this galaxy, he began, his voice cutting through the silence. We are not the strongest species. We do not have the longest history, but we have something that none of you have, something the Atticari will never understand. We have the will to fight for something greater than ourselves. We fight for the future, for our families, for each other. He paused, looking at the faces before him, the Thraxian general, the Xerian diplomat, the stoic Dragoran elder. They were all here, and they were all watching him. We have fought alongside you, bled alongside you, and proven that when humanity is tested, we rise, we do not bend, we do not break, and we will not allow this galaxy to fall under the tyranny of the Atticari. Our strength is not in our weapons or our ships, but in our hearts. Together, we are more than any one species could ever be. The room erupted in applause, and the tension that had been thick in the air began to dissipate. The Alliance was ready. The galaxy was ready. The battle that followed would go down in history as one of the largest and most significant conflicts the galaxy had ever seen. The Atticari, relentless in their pursuit of domination, attacked with the full might of their fleets. Their strategy was ruthless, their tactics calculated, and their leaders resolute. But they had underestimated one thing: the unity of the Galactic Alliance. The battle was a storm of chaos, fleets of ships engaging in combat, planets bombarded with energy weapons, and entire sectors of space turned into war zones. But the Alliance stood firm, pushing back with everything they had. Jacob led the charge, his fleet coordinating with precision, fighting with everything they had. The tide turned in the final hours of the battle, when Jacob, working with the united fleets, launched a decisive counterattack that crippled the Atticari flagship, cutting off their command structure. With their leader's death, the Atticari forces faltered, and the Alliance pushed them back, driving them out of the galaxy. The victory was a turning point, a declaration that no single empire, no matter how powerful, could dominate the galaxy. Humanity's role as a leader, as a unifying force, had been solidified. The Galactic Alliance had shown that the future of the galaxy was not in the hands of a single species or empire, but in the collective strength of all its inhabitants. As Jacob stood on the observation deck of the Valor, watching the stars, he knew the fight for peace would never truly be over. There would always be threats, always challenges to face, but humanity had proven something fundamental: they could face any storm, any trial, and they would always rise to meet it. Humanity had proven that strength was not just in the body, or in weapons, or even in knowledge. It was in the unity of their spirit, their will to survive, and their capacity to protect what mattered. The galaxy was safe, for now, and humanity, the young species from a blue world, had taken its place as the greatest force for peace and progress in the stars. And so, the dawn of a new era began. Galactic strength test obliterated by humans' first attempt, the best HFY stories. Part 6, The Legacy of Humanity. With the Adakari Empire's defeat, the galaxy had been reshaped. The Galactic Alliance stood as a monument to the power of unity, a testament to the resilience and determination of humanity, and the strength of every species that had joined together to defend the galaxy. But victory, as always, was not the end. It was merely the beginning of something far greater. The final battle had left deep scars, and though the Adakari forces had been driven back, the underlying tensions within the galaxy had not disappeared. The coalition's victory was seen as a victory for the galaxy's peace. But peace was a fragile thing, and the vacuum left by the Adakari's retreat was already being filled by new powers, eager to stake their claim in the ever-expanding cosmos. Jacob Carter, now known as the Supreme Commander of the Galactic Alliance, stood at the heart of the negotiations to establish a lasting peace among the stars. The Alliance had helped stabilize several regions, but many factions, both new and old, sought to seize control. Every diplomatic summit was a careful balancing act, and every decision weighed heavily on Jacob's shoulders. "We've won a great victory," Jacob said, looking out the window of the Valor, watching as the stars twinkled peacefully. "But the galaxy will never be the same. We've created something new, but that also means we've created something fragile." Mira Valen stood beside him, her gaze also fixed on the stars. "You've led us through the toughest battles humanity has ever faced, Jacob. The Alliance stands stronger than ever because of you. But you're right, we've only just begun to shape what the galaxy will look like moving forward." Jacob turned to her. "It's not just me, Mira. It's all of us. We've changed the galaxy, but we can't forget the cost of that change. And we can't forget that we're not the only ones with ambition." The Adakari were only one part of a much bigger picture. Their conversation was interrupted by an incoming transmission. The face of Zar, the Thraxian ambassador, appeared on the holographic screen. His tone was urgent. "General Carter, there's a problem," Zar said, his voice tinged with concern. "We've detected an anomaly at the edge of the galaxy, something enormous." Jacob's brow furrowed. "What kind of anomaly?" "We're still analyzing the data, but it appears to be a massive energy source. It's not like anything we've ever seen, and it's moving toward us at an incredible speed." Jacob turned to Mira, his expression hardening. "Have we alerted the council?" "Yes," Zar replied, "but we're not sure what we're dealing with yet. It could be another threat, or it could be something entirely new. Prepare for a full analysis of the anomaly, Zar," Jacob said. "We'll be ready. Keep me informed." As the transmission ended, Jacob took a deep breath. He had a bad feeling about this. "Another threat?" Mira asked, her voice tight. "After everything we've faced? We've only just begun to understand the galaxy," Jacob said quietly. "The real test is still ahead of us. We've united the galaxy, but we need to be ready for whatever comes next." In the weeks that followed, the Galactic Alliance scrambled to investigate the anomaly. The collective minds of every species in the Alliance worked tirelessly to understand the mysterious energy signature that was emanating from the depths of space. What they found was more troubling than anything they could have anticipated. The energy source was not a natural phenomenon. It was artificial, and it was moving with purpose. The council called an emergency meeting, with representatives from every species now involved in the new galactic order. Jacob stood at the center, once again thrust into a leadership role. But this time, the stakes were higher than ever. If the anomaly represented a threat on the scale of the Adakari, or worse, the entire galaxy could be in danger. "What do we know about this anomaly?" General Zar asked. His eyes narrowed as he surveyed the data. "It appears to be an advanced technology, beyond anything we have in the galaxy today," said Dr. Alina Roscoe, her voice filled with awe and concern. "It's unlike anything we've seen. The energy output is enormous, and it seems to be drawing on unknown sources. Whatever this is, it's not a natural phenomenon, it's a weapon." "A weapon?" the Zirian representative, Vlar raised an eyebrow. That's troubling. But who is it aimed at? We don't know yet, Jacob said, glancing at the map. But it's heading in our direction. We'll have to intercept it before it reaches us. We can't take the chance that it's hostile. The galaxy had come a long way since humanity's first test. But now, as they looked at the vastness of space, they understood that the real test was not just surviving, but understanding and mastering the unknown. The Atticari were not the only power that existed in the universe, and their defeat had only served to awaken the interest of even greater forces. As the days stretched into weeks, Jacob and the Alliance's best minds worked relentlessly to devise a plan. The energy signature continued to grow stronger, drawing closer to the heart of the galaxy. The clock was ticking. Time was running out. Then, at the very edge of the galaxy, they found it. A massive structure, a colossal artificial construct, was revealed by their probes. It was unlike anything they had ever seen before. Its design was incomprehensible, far beyond even the technological marvels of the Atticari. The energy readings were off the scale. But what was truly shocking was what they found when they sent a fleet of reconnaissance ships closer to investigate. The structure was alive. It was a living, breathing entity, its outer shell resembling a network of organic growths fused with advanced technology. It wasn't just a machine, it was a sentient being, and it was moving toward them, slowly but surely, like a giant, cosmic predator seeking its prey. Humanity, the galaxy's youngest species, found itself standing on the precipice of an unknown and terrifying future. This entity, this weapon, was beyond any of their imaginations. Was it a friend or a foe? And how could they face it if it turned hostile? Jacob stood before the gathering of leaders once again, facing the very real possibility that this might be humanity's greatest challenge yet. This is no longer just about us, Jacob said. This is about the survival of every species in the galaxy. We've come together to face every challenge before this, and now we must face something even greater. But if there's one thing we've proven time and time again, it's that we are stronger together. We will meet this challenge as one. As the leaders of the Galactic Alliance stood by his side, Jacob knew that the battle ahead would be the most difficult yet. But there was one thing they could be sure of. Humanity had already proven itself once again, in ways no one had ever expected, and no matter what lay ahead, they would rise to meet it. The galaxy's future would be forged in the fires of this new test, an unknown enemy, a living weapon from the deepest reaches of space. But if there was one thing the galaxy had learned, it was that humanity would never back down from a fight. And the stars would remember the legacy of those who dared to face the unknown.